The air was thick with dust and trembling earth. I could not see my mother anymore. Only the fading shapes of huge gray bodies moving ahead, swallowed by the golden haze that rose like a storm around me. The confusion was deafening. Trumpets blaring, footsteps pounding, hearts beating the rhythm of escape. In that chaos, I stumbled. My small legs struggled to keep pace with the countless feet that thundered toward the horizon. The ground beneath my soles shook like a living thing, restless and wide. Then, suddenly, silence. Not real silence, but that hollow echo left after the herd moves on. I stopped calling. My voice cracked into the emptiness, and the sound came back to me hollow and small. The smell of dust coated my tongue, bitter and dry. It clung to my skin, mixing with the salt of my fear. I blinked through the brown fog, searching for the familiar shape of her back, the curve of her tusks that always meant warmth and safety. Nothing. Just wind, dry grass whipping at my sides, and the endless sky above that seemed too large for a creature my size. I took a hesitant step forward. Then another, my shadow stretching long and thin across the cracked ground. The air was still hot from where the herd had passed. It carried traces of them, musk, sweat, the faint sweetness of crushed leaves. Each scent was a thread of memory tugging at my heart. I followed those threads, convinced they would lead me back to her, but the tracks scattered, confused by wind and panic. Tiny prints of birds overlapped the great moons of elephant feet. Somewhere far ahead, I thought I heard the deep call of an elder. Low and drawn out, I tried to answer, raising my trunk weakly, but only a short gasp came out, swallowed by distance. Loneliness, I learned, has a sound, thin and trembling, like reeds rustling before the storm. The sun leaned westward, throwing long strokes of light across the plain. I could feel its warmth fading from my back, replaced by the cool breath of approaching dusk. The world that once sang with the voices of my kind now seemed to whisper threats I didn't understand. Every gust of wind carried noises I hadn't heard before. Rustles, clicks, distant calls that made my spine stiffen. My heart began to notice what my eyes could not yet see. There was a strange rhythm in the stillness, an unseen presence circling the edges of my courage. I froze trying to listen. Somewhere behind me, a faint laugh brushed through the grass. It was not human nor kind. It rose again, multiplied, soft at first, then sharper, laughter layered in hunger. I turned quickly, my ears spread wide. The tiny hairs along my back stiffened. The world behind me was a blur of moving grass and shifting shadows. I saw nothing, but the laughter kept changing places, like the wind playing cruel tricks. My body trembled. I wanted to run, but toward where? The herd was gone, the scent trails fading. The plain stretched endlessly, both sanctuary and trap. I began to move slowly, careful not to make noise. Each step sank deeper into dry dust. The silence between laughs was the hardest to bear. It was the breath before a storm, the place where fear feeds itself. My heartbeat was the only sound I could trust. It drummed through my body, steady but fast, urging me forward. The horizon was turning red now, painted by a sun too beautiful to understand what danger looked like. I caught sight of my reflection in a shallow puddle left by last night's rain. A small creature, ears heavy with dust, eyes wide and lost. I stared at myself for a moment. That reflection felt like a stranger, a version of me stripped of herd and comfort. I whispered her name, though the air choked the sound. My throat burned from dryness, my legs from endless walking. Still, I couldn't stop. Something inside me, older than fear itself, pushed me onward. Maybe it was her voice, carried in my memory, reminding me that to stand still was to disappear. Then the wind changed. It came from the east this time, cold and sharp, carrying with it a new smell. Not dust, not grass, but something wilder. The metallic scent of blood mixed with the musky stench of predators. My eyes searched the distance, scanning every pattern of grass for movement. And there it was, a glint of yellow. Then 2, then 5, then more, eyes catching the dying light, low and steady. They did not blink. My body froze completely, but my heart did not understand stillness. It throbbed violently in my chest, sending waves of dread through every muscle. The laughter returned louder now, closer, surrounding the edges of my fading courage. I stood alone under the reddening sky, my small shadow swallowed by the growing night. The herd's warmth was gone, replaced by the rough whisper of approaching death. In the dust between us, silence stretched wide enough to hide a lifetime. I realized then that the world had changed, not cruel but indifferent, and I was about to learn how heavy loneliness can be when the dark begins to move. They came quietly at first, their laughter woven into the wind, faint and mocking. The grass swayed around me like whispers trading secrets I could not hear. My breath felt too loud, escaping my body in short, trembling bursts. I tried to shrink, to melt into the earth, but the dark was alive with sight. The scent of them was thick, sharp, and ancient, the smell of wet fur and hunger. I felt it before I saw it, the heavy pull of danger circling ever closer. My trunk brushed the dirt, trying to find the rhythm of the earth again, but it only found trembling. From every side came a pair of eyes, glinting like forged metal, low to the ground, steady in their confidence. I did not know then that they counted in dozens. To me, they were shadows given shape and breath. The moonlight was not kind. It painted them in silver, showing their ribs, their thin patience, their cruel beauty. I recognized the silence between their movements. It spoke of coordination, of memory, of ritual. A lonely breeze shifted through the grass, and I caught a clearer view of them at last. Their coats were pale and matted, their bodies lean with need. The lead one, older, carried a torn ear and eyes that did not blink. She stepped forward, head low, tail stiff, and in her gaze lived the decision I feared, the claiming of me. I backed away slowly, though there was no direction that meant safety. The plain was wide but offered no mercy. My feet sank into the dirt as if the land itself wanted to keep me still. Behind her, the others began to move outward, spreading like dark water. They did not rush. They knew waiting was their weapon. My breath caught. My knees trembled with each backward step. Somewhere deep in me, an instinct pulsed to stand wide, to raise my head, to make myself bigger than I truly was. I lifted my trunk and let out a sound that could barely be called a trumpet. It cracked in the air, weak and desperate, but it made them pause for only a heartbeat. Then the circle tightened again. Dozens of eyes turned into a slow, closing ring of movement. Their laughter grew thicker, rolling like low thunder under their breath. They were close enough now that I could hear the soft pad of their feet, the quick rhythm of their hunger-driven breaths. Time began to twist, stretching moments into unbearable stillness. Each second dragged like a stone. The night around me deepened, the stars dulling behind thin clouds of dust. My ears twitched toward every sound, the flick of a tail, the snap of a twig, the low hum of tension waiting to break. I remembered the stories told in quiet nights when we rested beneath taller trees. The old ones spoke of the endless rivalry between tooth and tusk, of the thin line between courage and fear. They said we carry memory in our bones, that even a calf knows the pattern of danger before it strikes. And in that moment, I understood what they meant. My body remembered even if my heart did not. I turned sharply, hoping to find an opening, but their formation closed like fog around me. My small size, once a symbol of youth, had become my enemy. I could feel the ground vibrating beneath my shifting feet, a faint echo of their patience. They were not rushing, not yet. They wanted to exhaust the fear, to let it ripen. The torn-eared leader raised her head and gave a deep growl that rippled through my chest. It wasn't the sound of attack, it was permission. The others inched closer, a few making short darts forward, testing the air, testing my will. I stomped once, the sound dull in the dust, and swung my trunk in frantic warning. They drew back just slightly, mocking the effort. Something cold moved through me then, not courage, but clarity. I began to realize that they were waiting for something else, the full descent of night. The moment when the world turns completely blind. That was when they would strike. I turned my head toward the darkness behind me, hoping still that I might hear the faint call of my herd returning, but only my own breathing filled the space. The plain stretched on without a voice, only the distant rustle of grass to remind me the world was still turning. Around me, the hyenas crouched low, their laughter slipping into low murmurs almost reverent. In their stillness, I recognized something familiar, the certainty of creatures who have waited too long for survival. Hunger had taken their fear, as loneliness had taken mine. When the torn-eared one met my eyes again, I felt a strange calm settle in my chest. For that fleeting instant, I understood her. We were both trapped by the same truth. Life demands its price, and the night chooses who pays it. She took a step forward. The others followed. The air tightened, the space between us no longer wide but pulsing with inevitable collision. My heart began to hammer again, drumming the rhythm of my lineage. Thousands of voices behind me that refused to vanish without sound. I filled my lungs and raised my trunk once more. The dark shivered in reply. The game had begun, and I was still breathing. They moved first. The sound was a rush of paws slicing through the grass, followed by the thud of bodies against the ground. My blood froze, and then everything quickened. Breath, heartbeat, the desperate surge of muscles remembering how to survive. The air filled with dust again, but this time it was not the herd that stirred it. It was chaos. The first hyena lunged low, jaws snapping near my legs. I swung my trunk instinctively, striking air first, then fur. A sharp yelp cut through the dark. The rest answered with growls that rose like thunder. They came from every direction, a storm of hunger and calculation. My small body was not meant for battle, yet the earth gave me strength. I stomped, my feet sending vibrations deep into the soil. For a moment, it was as if the land itself reminded me that I did not belong to silence. I lifted my voice and trumpeted again, louder this time, though it cracked midway. The cry echoed across the emptiness, trembling at the edges, but alive. One of them darted too close. Its teeth grazed the side of my leg. Pain flared hot and sudden, and I stumbled backward. My foot struck a patch of uneven dirt, and I fell to my knees. The world tilted, all sound muffled by the ring in my ears. Above me, eyes gleamed like tiny suns, circling with cruel precision. They struck again, and I rose with all the weight I could summon. My trunk lashed out, catching one across the snout. Its scream broke the rhythm of the pack, scattering their confidence. The torn-eared leader growled sharply, pulling them back into a cold, choreographed stillness. In their pause, I felt time crack. Seconds hung heavy, drawn long and deliberate. The moonlight flickered on the dust that danced between us. I could hear my own pulse, not as a sound but as a force inside my bones. I had no words for prayer, only instinct thick and ancient. Everything in me burned with one command: stay upright, keep breathing. The next attack came from the side, a blur of muscle and teeth. I turned too late, and the weight of the creature struck my shoulder. Its breath was heat and iron, its claws scraping my hide. I screamed, not in surrender but in defiance. I twisted, using every ounce of strength to shake it off. The ground itself seemed to tremble in sympathy. When it fell away, I staggered, gasping, my chest shuddering from both fear and effort. Blood smeared across the dust beneath me. Still, I did not fall. I could not. Somewhere in the rhythm of that moment, I felt something begin to change. The panic lessened, not because the threat was gone, but because I had become part of the fight. Every second sharpened into a blade. My thoughts vanished, only movement remained. Step, swing, breathe. The roar of their laughter faded into white noise, swallowed by the thudding of my own heart. They were circling tighter now, frustration bleeding into their hunger. The torn-eared leader snapped her jaws in irritation, her patience thinning with each missed strike. The tension stretched until time itself seemed to hold its breath. The world contracted to the space between us, me trembling but unbroken, and them restless with the need to end it. I met her eyes for a fleeting instant. She looked not at a calf, but at something refusing to die quietly. In that moment, I saw confusion flicker in her gaze. Then everything happened at once. They lunged together, a blur of motion, sound, and dust. I felt bodies collide against mine, twisting, snarling, knocking the air from my lungs. I screamed again, forcing my trunk downward into the earth, beating it like a drum. The sound rolled out low and heavy, echoing beyond what I could hear. My knees wavered, my vision dimmed, but I kept moving. The sky above blurred, the stars quivering into long streaks of light. The air stank of sweat, blood, and dust, the shared scent of survival. It was only 4 minutes, though. To me it was a lifetime stretched thin over a desperate edge. 1 minute, they closed in. 2 minutes, blood on my skin, breath ragged and tearing. 3 minutes, the ground alive beneath my stomps, the sound of my voice breaking itself against the night. 4 minutes, the world stood still. Silence followed, sudden and unnatural. The dust floated in slow spirals lit by the distant moon. My trembling body swayed where it stood, the earth holding me up where my legs failed. The hyenas halted, panting, uncertain. They listened to something beyond me, something neither beast nor night. Far away, too faint to be real, came the sound that had lived in my dreams, low, deep, and certain. A trumpet call. My mother, the night exhaled, and my heart surged with a new kind of trembling. Not fear, but belief that not all endings are quiet ones. The air trembled with that sound, deep, rolling, alive. It cut through the laughter, washed over the growls, and spread across the plain like the voice of the earth itself. Every creature froze. The hyenas turned their heads toward it, their yellow eyes wide with a fear they could not name. For me, it was not fear, it was recognition. Her voice had always carried weight, a sound that shook the dust from trees and softened the restlessness of the herd. Now it came sharper, older, filled with an anger that was not rage but command. My heart leapt as if it had been waiting for this breath, for this proof that love could travel across miles of darkness. The torn-eared leader hesitated, her body low, tail flicking with doubt. The wind carried her scent next, like rain after drought, warm, heavy, familiar. I could feel it before I saw her, a power that stirred the soil beneath my feet. The moon reflected over her tusks when she finally appeared at the edge of the plain. She moved without haste, but every step was final, every sound deliberate. The ground itself seemed to bow under her weight. The hyenas' courage broke like thin glass. Their formation faltered, their unwavering laughter replaced by whispers of confusion. One by one they backed away, torn between hunger and the ancient memory of fear. My mother lifted her head high, her eyes burning like 2 pieces of volcanic stone. No sound left her, but her silence said what words never could. Then she trumpeted again, a burst so loud I felt it ripple through my chest and scatter my fear into dust. The herd answered from somewhere behind her, their calls stretching across valleys and shadows. The night changed shape. What moments ago was a battlefield turned into sacred ground. The hyenas turned, unwilling to test what stood before them. The torn-eared leader was the last to linger. She looked at me, then at my mother, and I could almost sense in her eyes the ache of understanding. She knew the line between bold and doomed. With a quiet snarl, she retreated, the others following her into the tall grass, their shapes dissolving into the dark like smoke dying in the wind. When the last echo of their steps faded, silence returned, heavy and trembling. It wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was something purer, almost holy. My mother came closer, her steps slow, the sound of her breathing steady as thunder restrained. The warmth of her presence settled around me like dawn spilling over frost. She touched her trunk to mine, slow and certain. The gesture was simple, but it carried everything words could never hold: forgiveness, relief, and an ache that belonged to time itself. My knees shook again, this time not from fear but exhaustion. I leaned against her side, the rhythm of her heartbeat stronger than any promise. Together we stood, survivors of the same night. The wound on my leg burned, but pain no longer held meaning. Each breath came smoother, deeper, as if the air itself had learned mercy. My mind began to drift, still hearing the echoes of my cry in the distance, mingling with hers like two currents meeting after a storm. Around us, the plain grew quiet. The wind had softened, the stars seemed closer now, no longer distant watchers, but companions in our stillness. She kept watch, her body between me and the dark, her ears turning slowly to the night's fading whispers. Every creature in the grass listened too, as if itself honored the small return of balance. I looked up at her, the matriarch whose strength was born of centuries of memory. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw not pride, but something heavier, relief mixed with sorrow. She had known fear too. Somehow that made her even larger in my eyes. I understood then that even giants tremble when love is threatened. As the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon, the golden line cut across her gray skin, painting her in fire and peace. The herd's shapes moved in the distance, slow and rhythmic, ready to gather us back into the living circle. I felt her press her trunk once more against my cheek before she turned toward them, a silent command for me to follow. We walked together, the dust cool now beneath our steps. Behind us, the plain lay quiet, scarred but alive. Each footprint we left shimmered faintly in the newborn light, a trail of survival and remembrance. I did not look back. Some moments aren't meant to be revisited, only carried. The night had taken much, but it had given me one truth I would never forget. No distance can silence the bond that remembers its way home.